Well, this is a little bit awkward.
I can see you, but I think we should take these off.
This I was gonna do the whole show this way, but all right. I think we got the bit.
Much better. I can see you. We've got our hair readjusted under the headphones.
Got to tweak it all out. Welcome.
Welcome.
This is a first episode.
Number one.
Although, should we have started? Should it be zero-based indexing here? Should we have
You're
started with
absolutely
zero?
right. This is episode 0.
It's a huge error.
Yep.
I feel like we've already committed to the one, but I don't know. We might just have to go with it.
0/1.
It's the week of the vision. Is that what they're saying? It was last week. Last week it came out Friday.
Horrible shame it wasn't 4 years ago. 2020, the year of the vision. Like that would a missed opportunity. I think we can all agree.
I got one. You're still holding out, evaluating, seeing what happens. I had a little bit of drama getting mine. First I did the whole thing where you get up at the exact moment where it's going on sale. Although I'm on the East Coast, so that I think was actually like an 8 a.m. for me, a little earlier for the West Coast, but got my order and did the whole face scanning thing so that I got, first day delivery. And I'm watching that tracking number like a hawk. I think they gave like an estimate maybe by 3 p.m. they would have it delivered. 3 p.m. came and went. There was no vision. I'm still watching, checking out. I've one of those doorbell cameras. I think it's a Google one, but I have the live video stream up on my computer while I'm working, watching.
I haven't seen a soul.
Waiting for the person. No one shows up. And then all of a sudden I get a bing saying it's been delivered. I'm like, what? And how did I miss this? And I go down. I can't find it anywhere. I look around, look to the neighbors, don't see anything. I pull up the tracking number and it says we have, photo proof of delivery. I open up the photo and there's a picture of my vision, but it's at a completely different house that I've never seen before. And by the way, you're supposed to have to sign for this thing, but they've just left it somewhere that they've claimed as my house, but it doesn't look anything like my house. And so began the journey, and I eventually found it. It was at some neighbors that they left it, apparently accidentally. But yeah, I've got it.
I'm glad to see it. I saw it on your face, and we're going to talk about that plenty. But before we do, we should probably say who the heck we are. Introductions.
Let's see.
I know you and you know me, but
I'm Hunter Powers, and you're.
I'm Daniel Bishop.
And we worked together at one point for about three-ish years, somewhere in that ballpark.
If we're looking at calendars or passage of time, pretty close to 3 either way.
That, yeah. And we had a lot of discussions during those 3 years, and then we decided, why don't we take those discussions and try to turn them into something?
And here we are. With the Vision Pro and a measly Quest 3. Measly, it may not be.
I still...
Yeah, you've got both, so I
have both.
We're going to get into it. But one thing about the delivery, just before we even get into that, you mentioned that you were supposed to sign for this package. Did it say there was a signature? Was there and here's your signature that you can see that you totally left for it?
No, but I have had that happen before as well.
I've had alcohol delivered to me, and they just leave it on the doorstep. At no point anymore do they actually make me sign for stuff.
I have had a certified letter delivered, and they just sign for me. The post office. I don't know. It doesn't seem to. I don't know if they just really don't want to have to come back out, or they feel like they're doing you a favor. I don't really know where it sits. Where is it between laziness and super attentive service?
We'll have to talk to a postmaster general about that.
All right,
that's episode 2.
Yeah,
which is either the second or the third one.
The Vision. So I think I messaged you shortly after I got it, saying I don't really know about this thing. And
a pretty quick first impression of
And that was based on one big thing, which is the quality of the pass-through. The pass-through video. When you put it on, to what degree are you seeing the real world around you, and it looks and it feels and it smells just like the real world? And this, I felt was something that was incredibly hyped up, and people talked about. The pass-through is incredible. Pass-through is incredible. And I would agree that it's the best pass-through I've ever seen, but it's only a little bit better than the Quest. in the Quest 2, I guess.
2 or 3?
3. Sorry, 3.
Okay. I was going to say, I've seen people talk about the 2 versus the Apple Vision Pro. Obviously a world of difference, but I haven't heard anyone talking about the 3 versus yet. And it sounds like this is much more, dare I say, comparing apples to apples.
Someone else said that the Quest 3 is a 7 out of 10 and the Vision is an 8 or 8.5 out of 10. And I would agree with that assessment. It's a little bit better, but it's not mind-blowing at all. And so it's kind of like,
Is it a resolution thing, or is it like, so this thing, my biggest complaint about the pass-through, which is barely one because it's a technological marvel, I really truly believe so, is if I want to look at something else, like for example a phone or what have you, or even just my hand, anything significantly closer has like a aberration, whatever you'd call it, around that, where it almost looks like the light's kind of getting compressed around the thing that is significantly closer than is in the background. Is that still present in the Vision Pro, or is there a different aspect that seems better or worse or different?
There are still some issues when things are very close to you. I haven't gone back to the Quest 3 yet, since I've just been like full on Vision. So I haven't gone back. And there's this thing, I don't know if you've ever experienced this technology where when you're constantly using the latest, you don't always really notice the advances, but it's then when you go back after a period of time, you're like, ugh. I notice the most when I go to play like old, like retro video games, like go like play a Sega Genesis or something. And because I remember playing a Sega Genesis as a kid and it being super fast and smooth, and I go back, the frame rate is so slow as things are moving around the screen, and it's and just the, I guess, like what feels like the lag, and I don't know. Going back, I feel like I can tell there's been a huge increase in the speed and the quality of what we're doing. And so anyways, I wonder if I went back to the Quest 3, maybe I would look at that pass through and say, what is this?
We're going to have to hop back into it. Maybe we'll do one of these in workrooms. We'll be talking about Meta and the money that they've been shoveling into the furnace that is VR.
It's a lot of money. I think
it's a lot. It's 40, a lot of money.
42 billion.
Well spent.
Maybe is made up number. So the pass through is again best in class, but it's because the Vision's very expensive. Mine was like $4,000 with taxes, and I got the carry bag. That's the only accessory I got, and I got the cheapest one. There were 2 tiers above it. I got the cheapest one and the carrying case for it, $4,000 with taxes. So compared to the $500 Quest 3, the pass through is just not there. Now, the user experience is really good. The whole thing about like it just tracks your eyes, and then you find my camera here. You tap your fingers. It really works. And very soon after doing that, I found myself looking around on my computer screen, and like I would want to just start tapping, tap, 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 and drag and push and move. It's a really natural user interface that I think they nailed, and it works really well within the experience. So that's a good thing.
It's quintessential Apple as well.
Yeah.
They seem to really have a slick, well thought out, it just works sort of interface.
Yes, there's definitely comparisons to be drawn between their sort of innovations with the iPhone and rethinking about how mobile phones should work, or mobile computers, whatever you want to say, smartphones, I guess was probably the right term. And their rethinking of how there's another thing, like what are you supposed to call it? Is it VR? Is it AR? Is it spatial computing? But their spatial computing interface should work. They definitely have brought a level of polish to that previously wasn't there. So that's killer. Let's talk another negative. There's very little like virtual reality in the Apple Vision, and I like VR. I like going into virtual worlds and being able to walk around them. And that kind of doesn't exist. We have. It doesn't really exist. there are some things where you can be in an environment that kind of surrounds you, but it's not, it's a seated experience. It's not about just walking around. So the whole like virtual worlds that you wander around, at least as of present, it doesn't exist. And perhaps that's partially related to the limitations of no controllers for navigating around these worlds. All you have is your
Right.
fingers.
It's designed not to be a VR headset. Now,
Yeah.
I may not know what the difference between AR and spatial computing is, and I have a sneaking suspicion that there's not a big one, but it doesn't seem to be VR, because virtual reality is you're in a different space,
Yeah.
probably have some controllers, interact with. You don't have to have controllers for certain kinds of VR experiences, of course, but I feel like not even having that as an option makes a difference.
All right. And they do have this concept of environments, which is in a lot of different apps. Apps can even have their own sort of custom environments,
All right.
which are 3D, fully surround you environments that you can dial in and out. But again, it's not about it interacting with the environment. And I guess that's a key differentiator. It's really just the background for using the application. That's what an environment is versus some interactive world that you are interacting with. So that's a big negative for me, or something that I really like about VR that just isn't present. But now the thing that's like sells me on it, and why like there's zero chance I'm returning this thing, and I've been using it a ton since I purchased it.
Okay.
And that is the quality of the screens, which allow me for the first time to truly work in VR, in AR, in spatial computing, because I can project my display in front of me, and it's actually a really good monitor that I can write code on. And I've written, like over the weekend, I probably spent 10 hours in VR, AR, spatial computing. So I like the, I turn one of the environments on. I like there's one where you're like sitting on top of a mountain, and there's one where you're sitting beside a lake. I like those two environments. And then I like dialing it in so like the front half of me is all of the environment, and then behind me is the real world. And I can just sit there working. Maybe I have a monitor above me, like showing, I don't know, it's like a YouTube video or something, or just playing some music, or maybe it's a concert. And man, do I feel dialed in, like when I'm there and working, and all the rest of my world is just gone. And I'm focused on this one thing in front of me, and focused in a way that I personally find it challenging to be that focused about something. And I don't know, like, is it just the allure of something new, or is this, actually a shift?
It sounds like they're really pushing for this to be a shift, and indeed the meta folks as well. They're really putting a lot of money and time and energy and so on into truly trying to make this something that we actually use. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But before we get there, you mentioned that you're actually using this to do code. You have a floating window above you. Is this linked to your computer? Do you have to have a Mac? Can it be a Windows remote desktop sort of thing? Maybe you don't know the answer to that, but like, how are you actually getting a window or multiple windows? Is there a VS Code native app for the Apple Vision Pro?
Yeah.
How are you doing this?
So I'm just projecting my MacBook display, which when you open your MacBook, a little bar appears above it in augmented reality that says connect, and you just tap on it or tap your fingers, and instantly it loads up. There are development environments that can load in the browser, including VS Code. There's a version of VS Code that'll load in the browser. So it is plausible that you could use that. But I'm using my Mac. So I have the full power of my Mac there. And I have every app that I'm used to using. It's just that I'm using it on a giant screen in this wonderful world where there are no distractions.
Do you see the regular Mac screen as well, or does the spatial computing sort of wipe that away?
Well, so when you turn it on, your regular Mac screens go to black. But then what I do again is I like to be in one of the virtual environments in the front half. So I don't see my computer screens. They're replaced with, again, like a beautifully rendered 3D representation of the top of the mountains and clouds, or I'm on this lake and it's kind of like raining a little bit. And by the way, as an Easter egg, maybe the Easter egg, in these environments, I noticed I was up on top of the mountains and I said something loud and I heard a faint echo, and they've actually modeled like the reverb of being in the mountains. So if you say hello, you'll hear hello, 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 hello back. So there's an attention to detail there. But yeah, so when I'm using it, all I'm seeing is the virtual display in front of me. But you can see the real world too. Just turn your little dial, and you'll see your virtual display in front of whatever it is you're looking at in the real world.
Right. And you've tried. So you mentioned that this is something that you would actually sit and do work in. I know that you've tried doing this with the Quest 3 in the Workrooms app. You want to talk about what the differences between the two are?
Yeah, I've had, I think, every Oculus starting with DK1, the Kickstarter, and I've tried variations of it since then, and several other VR headsets as well. And it's just that, again, it's the quality of the displays, the text rendering. It's, for me at least, including the Quest 3, it's just not good enough. It's too fuzzy. I can't get enough on the screen in order to feel productive, and I just feel frustrated by the experience of actually trying to get real work done. And for me, and I have seen some other opinions like on X where people are saying like, nope, still not good enough. But for me, it crosses that threshold, and it's this is good enough. And I mean, I've done a lot of real work in it over these last couple of days.
Wow. I mean, if you've been actually working this thing, you said about 10 hours over the last few days, that's a significant chunk of time spent in, should we just say spent in space instead of fully saying spatial computing?
Maybe that works. I don't know. I still think of it as all the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this, there's people who believe that like in the future we might live in the metaverse, right? You've heard this theory. This has zero appeal to me personally. I have no desire to live in the metaverse. I'd much rather like live in the real world. But I realized that I do have a desire to work in the metaverse. And I think especially for like remote workers in a technology field, like I would argue that we already work in the metaverse. It's just that we have kind of a crappy interface to it, which is this like one monitor that sits on our desk where we try to like control all of these things and interact with all of these things. But that monitor really is, again, a kind of crappy interface and this layer of abstraction between you and the technology. And I do believe that there is a future and that we're getting closer and closer to it where we can do our work, and it will make sense to do our work in the metaverse where we can be much closer to the things that we're actually interacting with and working with. And that this, having a small window on your desk will seem really silly in like another 10 years.
You're going to see the end of monitors, and people are just going to plop on the headset. You can see your coworkers next to you. You can write your code on the floating windows in front of you. All that and more.
Remote tech workers, yes.
Maybe not like line cooks.
I mean, no, definitely not immediately. That's a harder transition to kind of see and understand. But remote technology workers, yes, it's gonna happen.
So last night, speaking of like working with coworkers in VR, this is neither working nor with coworkers, but I did a VR paint night with my wife. Yeah. We're sitting on the same couch, just a few feet away from each other. Both of us, Quest 3, using an app called Vermilion.
Okay.
And use the virtual environment as opposed to pass through. And I could see the virtual version of my wife, not actually where she was. For some reason, just decided to put her off to my right instead of my left. But I could see her avatar, and the painting that she was doing. And I could kind of hear the like YouTube video that it had that we were both watching to paint along to. And it's not working. She's not my coworker. She's my wife. But still having this sense of presence where she could have been in a different location. She happened to be 2 feet to my left, but she could have been somewhere else. And being able to do these sort of social experiences, I think, are one of the things that to me are a huge draw to VR. And I think that sort of begs the question, if I can work in spatial computing, in space, whatever we want to call it, is that going to be enough? I realize a MacBook Pro certainly can cost north of $4,000, But are people going to want to prefer having one of these headsets to a computer? Would you rather just have a keyboard accessory and literally not have a computer? Maybe everything's done in the cloud at that point. And that could be used for work, but still, even if you can talk to people socially and have like meetings,
Yeah.
are you going to get to play in it? And I don't necessarily mean play games. I mean play in a sense of be social. Do you know anything about the current state of things or where you want it to be?
Well, I think there is a large contingent of people today that their only computer is their phone. And people from all walks of society, and I don't think it's strictly an income driven thing that you don't have a computer. I think there are people at all income levels making the active choice that like I don't need a computer. Like my phone is all I need. And again, it depends, but like that segment of society exists today, and I think it's reasonable to suggest that there will be a point in the future where that phone is just replaced with a pair of glasses. Or
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, still gotta like. There's the whole thing about wearing something on your face, and I guess eventually the glasses become contact lenses or whatever. But let's just, at a minimum, say a large segment of the people that are currently only using a phone, a segment that we imagine would only grow over time because the phones become more and more capable and become closer and closer to the experience of the computer. But that the experience of just looking through it and having it in front of you and having it being ever present and being able to interoperate with the world that you're seeing around you is just so much a better experience that it makes sense that it will replace it.
In those lines, are there apps on the Vision Pro that are iPhone apps? Can you do messaging? Can you send an email? I don't mean open up like a browser and go to Gmail and then send it from there. Is there a Vision email app or a texting app or WhatsApp on there? Or iMessage, I suppose.
Yeah, all of the basic Apple apps are on it. So you have Apple Mail and Apple Messages. I didn't specifically look at WhatsApp. But there aren't a lot of third-party native Vision apps yet. There are a lot of iPhone and iPad apps that will run on it because it's the same architecture. So technically it could support all of them, but a lot of developers opted out of having their iPhone or iPad apps just directly run on the Vision, whether it's
right.
Because they wanted time to improve the experience, they just didn't think it was good enough, or there's even some suggestion that some people like Spotify and Netflix and YouTube may have been holding back their apps due to challenges working with Apple. It could have been political, basically, because they feel like Apple's taking too much of their money. There's certainly been a strong suggestion that that's the reason why certain apps like Spotify, like Netflix, like YouTube do not exist on the Vision. You can still access these things through the Safari browser, but there's no native app experience for those and a lot of other things right now.
Right. Well, I just today, a couple of hours before we started recording this, signed up for a demo. So I'm at least going to go try this behemoth of a headset. We'll see how it is. I know I want to play games with a VR headset. We've played mini golf together. It's a lot of fun. I don't want that taken from me. You can't take that putter out of my hands. So I don't know if I'd want to get, or at least only have a headset that won't let you play games. And am I a two headset sort of person? Do we want there to be two headset people? I feel like there needs to be one really good headset that you're going to wear. Like maybe some people have their glasses and their sunglasses, depending on if they're outside. I don't know if people are going to have multi-$1,000 devices for this is the games one and this is the work one. But time will tell,
I'll give you a theory there. So one of the downsides of the Vision is that you have to carry around a battery pack with it. There's no battery that's within the headset, which is not normal today, right? Like the Quest. Now, all the Quest series have the battery built into the headband, but not the Apple device. And they certainly could have. There's no reason they couldn't have put the battery into the back. I mean, maybe from an aesthetic standpoint, it probably would have made it more comfortable and balanced on your head better had they. But
Is
what
it a
I
bit
would
forward heavy?
it is. It's definitely forward heavy, and you notice it. You notice it a lot in comparison to the Quest. At least I did when I first tried it. I've now gotten used to it. I don't think about it anymore, but it was very prominent when I tried it. But here's the theory. Everyone's saying, yeah, just wait till like version 2 or version 3, and Apple will get rid of this battery, and it'll all just be in the headband. My theory is this isn't going away. And what they're going to do, I mean, it'll go away eventually, but it's not going away for a very, very, very long time. They're going to start moving more and more of the compute into this device. And that allows, initially, the headset to get lighter and lighter and lighter. And we all know that eventually they want to have just a pair of glasses on your head. But when we also know that the technology of having an entire computer and GPUs and memory and hard drives and batteries all into a normal pair of sunglasses, like at this point we can't even fathom like where that is on the technology timeline.
Right.
But the idea that we have displays built into a normal pair of sunglasses that has a cable that connects to this box, which by the way is funnily kind of the size of an iPhone.
You're already used to having one of those in your pocket.
That's completely plausible. Like that we can get there in 10 years, a pair of normal looking sunglasses with displays built into them that has a cable that plugs into your iPhone to then enable that sort of full spatial computing experience. Totally believable. And then that also answers the question of, you're like, well, I don't want to have multiple interfaces and all that. You have your iPhone for normal everyday usage, and then you just plug the cable into your glasses when you want your spatial and augmented experiences.
Maybe there's a camelback version. It's a backpack that you wear. That's for the real pro. You get the full MacBook Pro experience, a little extra oomph, but you're wearing it under your shirt instead of in your pocket.
Yeah. And I've also seen a lot of discussions around, we've spoken about it a lot. The Quest 3 is the obvious competitor to call out when you're trying to like compare it to something, because it's the second, it probably is the most widely adopted VR headset. Quest in general. I don't know how the numbers break down between Quest 2 and Quest 3. Where are we on that adoption curve?
Right. There are plenty of other companies that have headsets too, though, but you're right. Their market share is fractional.
And I guess that's because apparently, what's the number? I had it written down as 42 billion that Meta has spent since 2020 on the, what do they call it? Reality Labs. And they just
I'd be very curious to find out a breakdown of that.
42 billion. 42, the loss exceeded analysts' expectations, a total loss of $42 billion since 2020. And this is news because I guess they just came out with their quarterly numbers where they reported another $4.65 billion of loss specifically on Reality Labs. Like, it's just hemorrhaging money. And we assume that's because they're just spending tremendously on R&D and then selling these devices somewhere between at cost and a small loss.
The original Xbox was like that. It was not sold at a profit, at least not to start. Maybe eventually later in its life cycle, I believe they ended up making a profit. And I could be wrong, but I feel like I heard the original Xbox was not sold as a profit-making device. I think Meta, Apple, they're probably selling theirs at a profit. I certainly hope so. But I think Meta is really trying to make a seismic shift and be the leader of that shift in terms of how we seek out and get our entertainment or work apps or what have you. And they see these operating losses as the first step, a necessary step, a painful one, toward eventual tremendous amounts of profit. Having used Workrooms and used it with you, I think we can both agree that most of those billions are not being spent on every aspect of the software development, certainly not evenly across the whole system.
Workrooms is the virtual office kind of environment where you can talk to other people in avatar form, and you've got a virtual whiteboard, and you can project your monitors, and
it's fine.
I mean, I like it for a lot of stuff. It's just, where's the innovation? It hasn't changed since we started using it.
That's right.
Years
and
ago.
We've been using it for a while.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's where the money's being spent. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head, which is most of that tremendous amount of money is hardware R&D. Or maybe some of it's like lower levels of software, and they're trying to eke out every last millisecond that they possibly can. But the majority of that has got to be in hardware. At least I certainly hope so, given how little increase we've seen in terms of the quality of some of the first-party experiences that they've offered.
So they've lost $42 billion so far. I mean, do you have any guess at how much they're willing to lose? We know, I mean, at one point their board was just furious at Mark, but Mark famously has control. He has super voting rights. They can't fire Mark. So he's like, yeah, I'm doing it anyways. And maybe not quite so flippant, although maybe exactly as flippant. I guess it depends on where you are. But I mean, you think they'd lose $100 billion?
There has to be a point at which they say, at which I guess Mark says, enough is enough. This is clearly not working. It might have been in one of the notes that you sent me, but there was mention of sales of VR headsets are down year over year. 2023 had a significant drop in the sales.
40% drop.
Have we already reached saturation? Is everybody that's going to get one already with one? I don't think that's the case. I think as the technology continues to improve, we're going to see more and more people find it a useful thing to have in their lives. Maybe the Apple Vision Pro is a different way of interacting with things, different enough that more people want one that they wouldn't want a Quest 3. Maybe not. But all of that to say, this R&D at some point has to eventually end up with there being a profit, right? And I think they can write off the $50 billion or however many billions and billions of dollars that this ends up being and almost say, okay, there's a new slate this year. This is the year where we're actually going for profit. The same thing happens with lots of startups. You're not looking to make a profit in the first X number of years. You're looking to make a product, get the product market fit, get a lot of mind share among all the people that are going to use this service that you're making that's going to change the world, and then make a profit. So you're right. There is a point at which they say, we lost too much money. This cannot continue. Even if Facebook, even if Meta continues to have money, we can't keep spending it on this. But until then, I think they're going to happily keep doing it because they're not trying to be profitable yet. If they were trying to be profitable, they'd shut down R&D and they'd say the Quest 3 is as good as it's going to get, and we're going to have way less people actually making improvements to workrooms or to Horizon Worlds or whatever it ends up being. And then it becomes a much leaner organization. They're actually trying to make a profit. But they're not trying to do that right now. So, right, there is, to directly answer your question, at some point, maybe let's call it $100 billion, but that's not what they're thinking about.
Well, the rest of their business is still booming. They just released their financial numbers from Q4 of last year, where they did over $40 billion of revenue, huge increase in profit, 6% increase year over year in active users, and that's primarily Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Those three properties seem to have some very long legs, and that definitely gives them a tremendous amount of cover should they need it. And it's not as if Apple doesn't have projects that are also just losing billions on billions. They just don't tend to be talked about. But like the Apple Car, how long has that been going on? And they've hired, every car person, certainly in Silicon Valley and all around, stolen everyone and built giant research facilities. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they've spent $40 billion on their self-driving car.
And that supposedly got canceled and then reinstated, or they're starting it again.
Multiple times.
Right. A zillion dollars.
That started while Steve was still around, too. Like, that's how long it's been going on. We wouldn't be surprised at all to learn that they've spent $40 billion on something that they may never release.
Yeah.
So maybe we're thinking about it wrong. I don't know. There are... where do you sit? So over the weekend of this being released, there were many shots videos, photographs of people walking around in the real world, maybe even driving a Tesla. Lots of cyber trucks. There seemed to be a connection there. Is it appropriate to walk around in real life with your headset on? Do you walk around with your Quest 3 on?
I do not walk around with my Quest 3 on, but for the first time, less than a week ago, I saw a child, wearing a Quest 3 headset outdoors, like at a park. Just their dad was nearby and you know, watching them. But a child was like outdoors playing in VR. And I found that absolutely wild. I never really considered this as an outdoor toy. This is an indoors toy in my mind. But right, there have been some pictures circulating around. I've heard some things like these are comedians or they are like people who specifically do stunts like this. I don't know if this is a true good faith. These are normal.
And you think this kid was a comedian?
No, that kid was he was playing, Fruit Ninja or who knows what out in the real world. But I'm looking at the picture that you sent me now of the two people like out at a cafe eating with their headsets on. I would suspect something like that is a stunt. But I don't know if it will be forever.
Yeah, there was some suggestion that, and specifically, there's a lot of kind of like street fashion folks walking around Soho wearing these. Was this just a PR stunt? Was Apple paying models to walk around with Apple Visions on their head to get photographed to make it A, more socially acceptable and B, kind of cool? I don't think so, but it's not a horrible idea. It's not a horrible promotional idea.
They wouldn't be the first supermodels paid to wear something in public.
Now, you mentioned seeing the kid playing the Quest outside. Now, as someone, again, I really enjoy the like large virtual worlds where I can just walk around in the real world and my actions get mapped into the virtual world. And sometimes like finding enough space is challenging. So I can imagine that may be why, or at least one reason why, to seek out the larger space. Another thing I've been thinking about, though, like with these large worlds and what might be sort of a key use case in building out these worlds and building out this sort of metaverse is the applications of generative AI to it. I think that's sort of where we're heading in how we build all these things out. You agree? You don't agree? Keep the AI away from me?
I think so. Generative AI has a lot of heavy connotations with like large language models, and we'll certainly talk lots about that. But generative in general is something that's been in video games, for example, for a long time. If we're going to talk about virtual worlds that you're walking around, look at games like No Man's Sky, where you've famously got this whole galaxy to explore, and every single planet was not handmade by people. There were algorithms that were made. There were a couple of programs that are, this one makes the plants and it has the parameters that can make the plants within, and maybe it has to play nice with the other flora or the fauna or the planet or its atmosphere or what have you. But like, those are not being done completely by hand. I would be highly, highly surprised if the folks who are behind the sports games, you have your FIFAs and so on, if every spectator in the stands of every one of the stadiums that you can play in was placed and animated by hand. Surely those are being done in a generative way. And so I think when it comes to AR, VR, spatial computing, and so on, the future, a future definitely does involve large language models, generative AI, people that you can talk to, or quests in a dungeon crawler being automatically generated by a fake dungeon master. I think all of that's going to happen, but a lot of the rest of it is populating the world with stuff. And that stuff doesn't have to be powered by Llama 2. It doesn't have to be GPT-4. It can just be a thing that's really good at making fake houses, or knows where to put streets, or you should have X orcs per square mile out in the wilderness.
I agree 100%. On Apple's, they just had their earnings call as well. Tim Cook specifically called out generative AI as being a significant part of their future product offering, with big announcements to come later this year.
I hope so. Have you used Siri or Alexa
Siri
or a
sucks.
Google Home?
Siri sucks.
They're not great.
It's worse than not great.
They're not
it's
great.
Bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm at all. They came back for, I don't know, their last season. It's a very high number season, but yelling at Siri was a prominent moment in the opening episode. But yeah, it's just bad. Google's Assistant has in my mind has always been wildly better than Siri, and
it's not great. I have a Google Home, and depending on exactly how I phrase it and which device happened to be listening, despite the fact that they're all on the same network, I'm not 100% sure this is true. I'm like 99% sure that this is true. I have 2 speakers and like a Nest Hub Max, which really rolls off the tongue. Depending on which of them or my phone was listening, if I ask my Hue lights to be turned down or to a specific setting, it'll do it or say, I don't know how to do that. I know it knows how to do that. It's done it before. Please turn down the lights. Or maybe I didn't say the specific phrase for like activating Hue. And that seems absolutely ripe and or rife for generative AI, large language models to get in there and say, I understand what the person wants to do. That intent is known to me. I'm hooked up to all of your apps and your whole smart home, and I'll just make that thing work. And of course that's going to make its way into phones and our home devices and the Rabbit R1 and the little her style like clip that you're going to put on. What's the name of that one?
Oh, it's something pen or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've kind of dismissed that one. I did order the Rabbit mainly just because it was so cheap. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you order one?
No, $200. I'm on the fence, and I've looked at their like release notes of here's the things it can do and here's the things that it might be able to do in the future. It talks about travel as something that it can do, and then the way in the future is reservations. So if it can't book travel for you, it can just talk about travel. Okay, yes, large language models can talk about it. Sure would be neat to go to Paris, and here's 5 things that you should do if you go there. But if you want a little device, whether it be your phone or a Starfleet style pin that you tap a couple of times and just ask, or any device in between, maybe it's the goggles that you're wearing, you want to go from something that you can ask instead of just have a conversation with to ask and get something done out of. Like a smart home is supposed to do. Hey, turn down the lights. Hey, set my humidity level if I have a humidifier. Hey, do this. Hey, do that. Turn on this music. And those are actions that pop out of that thing. So I'm very curious what the Rabbit is going to be like, but looking at what it says that it's going to be able to do out of the box didn't seem like much other than chat with.
I still don't really know what it is. I just ordered it. I got caught up in the hype and I ordered it. It's designed by Teenage Engineering. I really like Teenage Engineering as a company.
They make very good looking stuff.
Very good looking stuff. So I was and I don't own any of it yet. So this will be my first Teenage Engineering device. Cool. And then like everyone was just talking about it. It was only $200 and there's no monthly fee. That's another thing. Everything now has a monthly fee.
Those API calls aren't free.
Nothing
is
free.
I'm curious.
No monthly fee.
Yeah.
And there is a keynote where the CEO talks about it for about, I think it's like about a half an hour long. I can't watch it. I watch it for like 2 minutes. I'm like, this is boring. I'm turning it off. So I'm
still going to buy it.
I don't know what it is. I know it's like something, do you talk to it? Is it just a talking to it thing? I saw one demo, like a video where it's talking to it, and it seemed really, really slow. And I know other people have said, why isn't this just an app? And I also don't understand, why isn't this just an app? Like, would I ever take this instead of my phone? And I know they have some idea that it's kind of controlling your phone, but I still don't get that either. Like it controls the Android apps. Does that mean you need to have an Android phone somewhere that it's controlling, or they have some virtualized phone off in a server, which also brings back into question, how is there no monthly fee if that is the case? I honestly don't. I was like, all right, $200. And I think sometime in March or April, it'll show up and then I'll try to understand what it is.
I think we're going to see 3 years from now a retrospective on the Rabbit R1. And it's either going to be, and we learned all of these things, and here's how the Rabbit R2 is going to actually change the world, or it's going to be, boy, that thing sure did crash and burn, but we learned a lot of lessons, and here's a different product that'll meet more people's needs. But right, it's a small screen. It's got a camera. I think like a button that you can talk to. The ChatGPT app has a talk to it feature, and that's already hooked up to multiple, call them agents, call them what it functions, but like it can do some things already. So yeah, the big question is, what is the rabbit going to do that ChatGPT doesn't?
How is it better than an app on my phone?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's true today that, you know, right, the app on your phone is better than the native assistant that's on there. That's where I guess we were talking about earlier. That the app, it's better than Google Assistant. It's better than Siri by a mile. So it seems inevitable that they, being Google and Apple, will bring a similar generative model to their devices. And that seems, I think that's what Rabbit's jumping off of, is all the excitement and acceleration behind that. And potentially once Apple and Google announce native support for that, that excitement will die down a little bit. But do you think the reason we haven't seen it thus far is just it costs a lot of money to run these large language models at scale? Is that why the adoption, I don't know, you could argue it's happening really fast, but it still hasn't happened yet? Is that the holdup? Do we have to wait until these models can run locally on our devices to see them in our assistants?
There are local large language models already available, but you're right, like on a hardware requirements level, it still is prohibitively expensive to a lot of people. 10 years from now, the sort of GPUs that everyone has as the latest and greatest and very, very expensive will be not. 2 years from now, they won't be. That's sort of how technology works. It keeps marching forward. And there will be a point where what is today's latest and greatest would be able to fit onto a phone. Let's call that 10, whatever, 15 years from now. But also, everything's connected to the internet. Why make everybody have their own fairly expensive GPU when there can just be a cluster out somewhere that you're calling out to? Granted, this means that people are subscribed to more services and you're beholden to the usage constraints that these companies put up. A lot of people have complained that they can't do specific things with ChatGPT, or it won't respond to certain kinds of requests in a certain way. That can be overly cautious. And so some people have tried to make some really raunchy large language models that you can have on your own home computer. I think there's a place for both. And I think from a hardware type perspective, you're looking at like a Rabbit R1 or R2 or R3 or, you know, its successors. Are you going to see something that everything is contained on that one object that has to run what currently would be a pretty beefy computer just to do an okay model? Or do you want the best results? And generally speaking, those best results are going to be on huge super clusters that are being run by one of 3 or 4 large corporations somewhere. And maybe we'll find in-betweens. Maybe people find a way to take, some fine-tuning aspects like a LoRa and slap that on top of an API that's already coming to you. I think there's a lot of room for people to find out different solutions to these things, but I don't know.
Well, we know that Apple is playing in the space. They just recently released another paper. I think it was in a partnership with the University of California on something called, I guess, MGIE. It's a multimodal guided image editing model. It sounds
calling
very
it
Apple.
Maggie.
Maggie?
Maggie?
Yeah,
right.
Sure, Maggie. It sounds very Apple-y, where you just sort of describe, the things you would want done to your pictures. Like I can imagine using that within Photos on an iPhone. They're definitely playing in this space. It's just a question of when they will deem the technology to be good enough and potentially cost efficient enough, if it needs to run locally on their hardware, to bring it out. And a lot of people are speculating that the next iOS release, I believe that would be 18, is when we're going to see this. I guess Tim has said that there will be a significant announcement later this year in this regard, so it's probably happening.
Sure. We saw something very similar with like Photoshop. Photoshop now has some generative AI or
Yes.
Stable Diffusion powered, whatever it is, powered image editing tools incorporated into it. Apple has a bunch of software that they've got that these same sorts of tools could absolutely be integrated into. Microsoft has been making a big push for Microsoft Office having some generative capabilities. If you load up Google Docs, that has some generative AI powered autocomplete stuff added in there. The core suite of Apple apps all having something like that, whether it be movie editor, sound editing, image editing, text creation, PowerPoint, or whatever the Apple equivalent thereof is, editing and creating and so on. I think we're going to see a lot of these technologies worming their way into basically everything. And that might sound a little scary, but each of them is going to be tuned to that one specific sort of use case.
Yeah.
A specific example that I have for you. I opened up Google Sheets the other day.
Okay. Right.
And I was just making... It doesn't matter. I was making a fairly simple sheet, and I added in 2 entries into a column. It was dates. And in the past, what you would do is you would like select those 2 and then drag it down. And I realize this is dates. I'm not going to fill that in. As soon as I entered in the second date, it just filled in the rest of them. It just did that in a grayed out form and said hit tab or enter or whatever it was to like accept this. It just made things a little bit faster and a little bit nicer and a little more convenient because it anticipated what my needs were and gave me a potential solution to them. I think that's a perfect use case for this kind of technology. And we're going to see it for Excel. We're going to see it for Doc. We're going to see it for PowerPoint. We're going to see it for everything.
Well, I'll give you an example of a story that was in the news this week. Apparently, there's now a website that will just generate your ID for you. You no longer need any form of identification. You can be whoever you want. Apparently, it's called Only Fake, although it also appears to be down right now, so I don't know.
I looked around. I couldn't find the website.
It's in the Internet Archive.
Okay.
So
it
must have existed.
Okay.
We think it must have existed. And so the idea here was that you can go to this website and it will generate a driver's license, a fake ID, a passport, and there are many things online that require you to verify your identity, where you need to go through these, they call them like KYC processes, know your customer. Lots of banking and financial related stuff. It's certainly prominent in the kind of crypto world where when they have regulations, they have to go through these processes of validating that who you're talking to is who you think you're talking to. But also, if you're a vendor and you want to register on Angel List to be, I'll paint your house for you. You've got to verify your identity, and they use these same providers where it's typically you take a selfie and then you hold your driver's license up to the camera, take a picture of the driver's license. The software then compares the two, checks it against a federal database, and says, "Yeah, seems like it's a real person."
So I think what you just said was actually the crux of this. Having read the article about the crypto exchange accepting this picture, they must not have been checking against a real database. There are federal or whatever, any country is presumably going to have a database where all of the passports are.
Yeah,
like that has to exist. I don't know this for a fact, but like it has to. On a state level, I know these sorts of things aren't as national as they probably should be, but like each state is going to have their own database of the driver's licenses, for example. And so if you go to a crypto exchange and then you give them a picture, and maybe it also takes a picture off of a webcam or something, and that's what's being faked, you can say, yes, this picture of a person that was taken and this picture that after a program looks and says that looks like a real QR code, this is the correct format that the passport should be in. I see the dots in a certain way that is indicative of the micro such and such that like a real passport should have. But that exchange couldn't have been asking, hey, the UK, is this a real passport?
Yeah.
And those kinds of things exist. There are background check companies who actually check this stuff. So I think as amazing as it is that we can fake a very compelling looking passport, people have been faking very compelling looking IDs to get into bars since the time there have been IDs. This is just the continued arms race. All you have to do is check. You just have to check against a database. So whatever future we're headed toward, that future includes anytime that you've got an ID, it's nice that you have the physical thing, but we're going to actually ping the state, national, whatever database and be like, is this a real person? And then look at the person. Yes, that has the right picture and so on. So it's scary that this site was created that can supposedly get past this step of verification, but it can't have been very good verification in my mind.
I think that's a really good point. Thinking back to the fake ID example, there were also a lot of like not very good fake IDs that were still just accepted. And so it's like, it's nothing. If you really want to know that the person's real, you can. And if you're only sort of like wink, nudging to do the validation, because technically you have to. And so what's the absolute bare minimum? Nothing's changed in that regard.
You mentioned regulation for cryptos. Maybe they're regulated to having to check IDs in certain cases or to do business in certain countries. And so, they're checking that it's a real ID.
Yes.
But not actually spending the $2 per person to actually check against the national database or whatever it ends up being.
Yes, it is more expensive when you do the database checks. And the database checks aren't available for every country. At least they weren't the last time I looked. I mean, US has really good coverage on the databases. But once you get outside the US, there isn't nearly as much thing. So I can imagine if I'm trying to fake some website to allow me to do something that, let's just say you're not allowed to do in the US, I'm going to choose an obscure country, have it generate all my credentials. You're not going to be able to verify against it. Maybe you don't even want to. And it probably has a fairly high success rate. Did you hear about these toothbrushes? Just to pull a 180, that apparently a bunch of toothbrushes were hacked.
All right. So we started this episode with me wearing a Meta Quest 3. I think it can be said fairly easily that I like technology.
Yes.
That I am... I have some of the latest-ish and greatest-ish tech out there. I'm a proponent of tech kind of in general. I said I have a Google Home. I said I have Hue lights. Call me a cyber Luddite. I don't need toothbrushes that can become part of a botnet. I just don't.
Approximately 3 million smart toothbrushes running a Java-based operating system were hacked and formed into a botnet, according to sources.
I know the why. No. I know the how, and I know the why. The why is people wanted to have a botnet to do their nefarious deeds. And I know the how, which is bad security on your toothbrushes. I want to know the other why, which is why were there toothbrushes that could be connected to the internet at all? Why are toothbrushes running a Java? I'm not knocking Java, though it is a terrible language. In this particular case, I'm not knocking it. In general, I am. But like why? Why?
What OS does your toothbrush run, Daniel? Now I'm curious.
Well, I believe the article said that it was a Java-based operating system.
Yes, that's what it said.
Okay. I don't know of, whatever the Linux kernel is that's underlying like Ubuntu or whatever, probably also, frankly, some sort of Unix type kernel underlies Windows. I don't know what underlies Windows. I know it does for Mac as well. I don't think it's Java all the way down.
No, the story is a little fishy, but it's also a little funny. So we're covering it here.
I suppose so. Still, do you have a Wi-Fi enabled, internet connected, probably mining bitcoins for somebody toothbrush?
I don't, but I would. Like that's like just like I purchased the Rabbit. Like if it got a little buzz, like everyone's buying it. It's got his AI built into it.
What does it do? What does an AI toothbrush do?
Well, obviously, it's going to like help you brush your teeth better, and maybe it can keep you informed while you're brushing them, and giving you feedback and talking about the news. It can be your friend. You can
talking about the news, right? You just slap a couple googly eyes on the stick end, and then while you're brushing your teeth, hey, did you hear?
Well, I don't know if you've ever tried those headphones that like don't have speakers and they just sort of vibrate your temples in order bone conducting headphones.
Yeah, I have some Aftershocks. They're great.
So maybe there could be teeth conducting headphones. And then so as you're brushing your
Teeth or
teeth,
bones.
you're hearing, a beautiful orchestral rendering of something. I don't know.
It's better than the buzzing sort of noise that you're usually getting. So
wait for the next CES. But I guess that's the trend, just to connect all of our devices, and it makes sense. They've been talking about it forever being like many, many years. Everything gets connected, even your washing machine. Someone put a story up the other day that their washing machine, they're monitoring it, was consuming 3.7 gigs of data a day. And if you happen to not know, 3.7 gigs is a lot of data. Like, how much data is like a movie, like a full movie?
Depends on the compression, but a couple of gigs or so.
A couple of gigs. It's about a full movie.
Sure.
The washing machine is downloading an entire movie every single day.
What can I say? It was bored. No, I think it was talking to all the toothbrushes. It's the washing machine talking to the toothbrushes. They're making their plans, mining their bitcoins, and netting their bots.
All right, Daniel. This has been a interesting conversation, and I say we try to do it again next week. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a lot of fun, Hunter. It's been a pleasure.
All right, man. Our constant quest to see if indeed they are self-aware. Until next time.